The sword and board playstyle requires you to hold a one-handed or versatile weapon in one hand, and a shield in the other, which is your board. It's a pretty common playstyle for martials, but it's not really that great. So let's see how bad it is. Welcome to Pack Tactics, where we do sword and board math. So let's talk about exactly what I interpret as sword and board. There are obviously different angles you could look at for the point of comparison. The way I usually see the phrase used is sword in one hand and shield in the other. Obviously something like a polearm could be used as well, and then we have to bring a polearm master, which is actually a strong option in many cases, like for example the crown paladin build I made here. It uses a quarterstaff in one hand and a shield in the other. It's a really strong build, link in the description. To quickly sum up why a quarterstaff is used in a build like that has to do with Polearm Master working with it, that's a DPR increase. It later then picks up levels in Warlock, which means it needs a way to use components to cast Warlock spells. You see, the build has its hands full, so a component pouch won't work, but luckily for us, a quarterstaff counts as an arcane focus, meaning it can cast spells through that. And lastly, Warcaster works with Polearm Master, making it easier to reaction cast spells. Oh, and I almost forgot, dueling fighting style works with quarterstaff and shields too. This is a lot of good options, and it opens up even more options with reaction cast spells. It's the exact opposite if we use a longsword, rapier, mace, or whatever, and I'll show you what I mean. But first, this video is sponsored by World Anvil, where you can create epic worlds full of fun adventures. With this powerful tool, the world itself is at your fingertips. World Anvil has great guides and a passionate community who are dedicated to storytelling. If you need help, there's tons of it. I've played in countless homebrew worlds over the years, and in all of those games, all of the lore and maps and stuff are just shoved into a Google Doc, and they tend to be very messy. But World Anvil helps you organize all of that easily. Lore is easier to keep track of, be it a powerful person, country, a particular war, a god, and so on. And it also makes it incredibly easy for your players too. There's also the maps. This is like Google Maps, but for your own world. I've never played in a game with an interactive map like this. This is super optimal because it makes your world feel so much more alive and so much more exciting to explore and read. If one of my DMs optimized this hard, I would buy them pizza. That's why I highly recommend checking out World Anvil. What they're doing is magic to me. Use the code PACK at the checkout and you'll get a 40% off any yearly subscription. And who knows, if you're really good at it, you might get some free pizza from your players.
Kobold, I love pizza!
I know you do. Anyways, back to the video. Let's focus on the sword angle. From what I can tell, this option is favored over others because you are a bit more bulkier than someone that uses a two-handed weapon. Due to your shield, it gives a +2 AC bonus. Sometimes I hear people talk about how you can tank in your party. Obviously, you give up damage by doing this, as wielding a weapon using two hands does more damage. Let's first look at how low your damage really is. I'll be doing a pretty basic level comparison. On the one hand, we have a character with 20 levels in Champion Fighter, using a longsword, picking up the dueling fighting style to increase their damage, and maximizing their strength ASAP. On the other hand, we have a character with 20 levels in Cleric who gets potent spellcasting at level 8 and starts maximizing their wisdom from level 8 and onwards. For the fighter, these are my AC assumptions. Additionally, I assume 8 rounds of combat per short rest for the purposes of calculating DPR using Action Surge. For the comparison, the cleric will be casting Toll the Dead. That's it. I assume that whenever they cast it, they use it on a creature with missing HP. You might argue that's a bit optimistic, but it wouldn't make a big difference if I changed it to be against a creature without missing HP, a small portion of the time. For the save chance, I assume an enemy would have a 65% chance to fail a saving throw if the cleric were to maximize their wisdom as soon as possible. This means that between levels 4 and 11, the enemy will have a 60% chance to fail in this case.
Kobold, this is boring. Just give us the results.
Okay, here it is, Gator. At lower levels, the difference in damage is abysmal. Meanwhile, both of you are rocking the same AC. The cleric can also wear the same kind of armor and shields. We can see the gap grow a bit from level 5 and onwards, but remember, the cleric is literally only casting cantrips. They're basically playing Martial Simulator and not expending any of their spell slots. Add any big spell whatsoever and the cleric is winning incredibly easy. It has a ton of options and a lot of those options are really good. Meanwhile, the only option you really have that's related to sword and board is Shield Master, which is really bad, and Dueling Fighting Style, which is good to be fair. But like I said from the start, the problem you have is you just don't have a lot of options for improvement overall. You have 2 options! But to be fair, the polearm way doesn't have a lot of options either, but it opens up a gateway to a lot of options. And lastly, they're actually good options. 1 D&D isn't going to dramatically change this sword and board playstyle with the current information I have, which is the Player's Handbook Playtest 5, by the way. Sure, it raises the DPR floor by a little bit, but so is literally everything else, including the monsters most likely, which wouldn't surprise me. Meaning it basically won't do anything, or it might just become worse. Who knows? I hope I'm super wrong about this, and they actually do give them plenty of options, and hopefully those options are really good. But right now, there's almost nothing. It's a shame, because I think the sword and board concept is really cool, but it sucks that I have to coat it with the flavor is free paint, and pretend that my quarterstaff is a longsword, just to have good options.
But Kobold, it's not about damage, it's about defending your allies!
Well, you lost me there, Gator. Marshals deal damage, that's their main job. If they can't do that very well, then they're basically not doing much at all. I often see tanking as a character fantasy, but really a marshal is not going to allow you to fulfill that fantasy, sadly. Tabletop Builds has multiple great articles about this. One is called The 2 Problems with Tanking in D&D 5e and the Solution. The other is called The Myth of Party Roles in D&D 5e. The basic idea here is that in 5e, tanking is not a big thing. Like for example, even with the Sentinel feat, it's easy for multiple enemies to move around a frontliner who only has a single reaction with which to make an opportunity attack. There just really aren't many strong ways to aggro enemies. Or in other words, attracting enemies to attack you. Now, we do have things like Path of the Ancestral Guardians Barbarian, Kender, and Cavalier Fighter, but any option you can find also has very big flaws. Like, let's be honest, everything I just named, they're not very good options. And Kender is a gnome. If your DM does for one reason or another agree to focus fire your character, there is the issue of there not being a good reason to fulfill that tank role to begin with. Like, if built right, there shouldn't really be any characters that need a tank's protection to survive. This goes back to the squishy caster fallacy, which Tabletop Builds also has an article on. Generally, casters are more durable than marshals if you try at all. This is because of their fantastic defensive spells, and it's very easy for them to dip for armor. They can even fling spells while wearing armor. Shield in one hand, nothing in the other. Component pouch. Boom. Casting spells. I'll conclude like O'Dear did in their article on the myth of party roles. The lesson you should take from this is don't listen to when someone says, "We need a tank." Just play what you want to play. This is not their character, this is not my character, this is your character. You play what you want to play. If you do want to play sword and board, then play sword and board. The point is, don't feel forced into going the sword and board route. And if what you want to play isn't that strong, it probably is better than sword and board. It wouldn't surprise me. End of video. Bonus content. I got a lot of comments about people not understanding my take on Sea Druid, so I'm gonna tackle it again quickly. Here's the context. Wrath of the Sea is a little weak. Its push doesn't work very well because you cannot walk away after pushing them. They need to be close by at the end of your turn. And what enemies can't walk 15 feet to you? Zombies can walk more than 15 feet. You can combo it with Ray of Frost, but wouldn't it just be better just to move even further away? Well, there is the damage, but it's not half on a save, so it's not great damage at all. I guess it's okay when you get it, but And then I talk about 10th level feature and up, and those are good. But a lot of people didn't understand my take on why I thought this 3rd level feature was bad. So here it is. Bonus action, last 10 minutes. At the end of each of your turns, you can choose another creature you can see within 10 feet of yourself. The target must succeed on a con save or take thunder damage and push. I thought this was enough to tell you this is bad, but let's break it down even more. When you're actually using this feature, you look like this. Gator here is a marshal in this example. The mob moving like this does not trigger opportunity attack. I'm actually in potential danger by doing this. And remember, this is a con save. If they succeed on the con save, nothing happens. I don't even push them. I'm actually gambling by standing here. But if I walk backwards 30 feet, then I'm super safe. So walking backwards is better. If this was a dungeon, then me moving would probably give me full cover. If I had a horse or a mule, I would have even more speed with these mounts, and they can disengage or dash for me without taking any of my actions. The thing is, this feature tricks you into being close to melee as a druid. You have to end your turn close to melee to activate the damage and push. I've talked about features and spells like this for many years now. I don't know why people are surprised. My most recent one is Spirit Shroud, and like Spirit Shroud, this is a trap. When you stand this close, you have a greater chance of taking damage than walking away. You also have a greater chance to lose your concentration on a spell like Spike Growth or Sleet Storm. By the way, if you combo this with Sleet Storm, remember, your feature is sight-based. Anyways, as for damage, this is not half on a save. It's a bonus action setup. Costs a wild shape, which is not a big deal to be honest, and lasts 10 minutes. Some people argue it's free due to action economy. That's not true, but I understand what they mean. It's not like a bonus action disengage or anything, it comes with a cost. And the question is the cost worth it? Assuming my wisdom mod is 4, if I bonus action cast magic stone and give them to commoners, my DPR then is 14.02. With Wrath of the Sea, I'm doing 8.4 DPR. In that math, I'm being super nice to see. I assumed 60% chance, but it's a con save. So in reality, it's actually like 50%. And when I do that, it's 7 DPR. Guys, it's not a complex feature, and it really didn't need a breakdown like this. Surface reading should tell you enough. You're playing with one option, and the one option is not even good. It's not like the other subclasses where you have a lot more options, and some of those options are good. That was considered in my analysis too. That's basic optimization to consider your options. Another thing I consider in my analysis is damage dealt versus damage taken. If I can fight safe, I will do it. Now, some of you might argue, why not take advantage of both Sea and Magic Stone? If you take advantage of both, then you do more damage. But you have to ask yourself why you want to be in melee to do an additional 7 DPR. Anyways, if you like my stuff and wish to support me, I have a Patreon. Usually I never promote my Patreons, so I really should start now. Some people didn't even know I had one, so well, now you do. Also, don't forget to check out World Anvil. Thank you for watching. Bye bye!